We are joined, as we are each month, by Jacksonville Mayor, here to answer our questions and yours about city business. Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning, Ann. Nice to see you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. We have to get it out of the way. This is sort of our sports morning corner here. Have you recovered from the loss?
Well, recovered, I don't know. Look, I said all along that this whole run was incredible, and I don't think anybody would have ever predicted we would have turned the year around the way that we did. What I always say to people is, sometimes the worst thing that it seems like can happen turns out to be the best thing. Like when we got blown out by the Texans, when they came back and blew us out, I don't know that we would have gone on that magical run had we not had to reset after that game. So my view is simply that this is just a step on the path, and this is going to be an elite team for a long time. That said, I went home on Sunday after the game and ate a canister of chocolate icing. So, we all do what we must to get through the moments.
Our coping techniques.
But I'm okay, and I think we'll all recover. What I loved the most, Anne, honestly though, was to see how much the city embraced the team and all the love and the unity and the excitement. And I don't think we could have fit another body into that stadium. It was so packed, and it was great to see the whole community rally around it. That said, I'll be sending some shrimp and a contribution to the food bank there in Buffalo, personal contribution to their food bank and some shrimp to the mayor over there who was really delightful, but I was sorry to have to do that. I was looking forward to some buffalo wings.
Some buffalo wings. I understand though that he's agreed to go ahead and make his donation to the Feeding Northeast Florida regardless.
Yes, we discussed that as we were making the bet that regardless we were going to both make those contributions, and those will both be personal contributions from each of us. So
buffalo wings next year maybe.
Yes.
All right. I do want to move on to a more serious topic. This was the conclusion of an investigation by the state attorney into a gun registry that was at City Hall and at the Yates building, ultimately determined to be not legal because state law prevents kind of recording people, registering people who have firearms who are legally entering with them into a building. So tell us, first of all, about how you learned about the outcome of this investigation, the decision by the state attorney not to bring charges against anyone.
Well, we learned about it from Michael Fackler. He let us know what the decision was. But we cooperated with the state attorney for that entire 8-month investigation. I turned over every document, everything we could find. Obviously, cooperated completely, and it was a thorough investigation. And what they determined was exactly what our sense was from the very beginning, and that was that it was, an individual security person who decided to keep the log in hopes of creating a safer environment, unaware of the law, and we were certainly not aware of it. Neither was the previous administration when it was begun. And so the end of the day, as soon as we found out about it, we put a halt to the process, and we'll always follow the law. We'll always protect constitutionally protected rights in Jacksonville. And I think that we're grateful for the outcome and are ready to move on.
The state attorney's decision not to bring charges against anyone has been challenged by the Attorney General. James Uthmeyer has said this isn't over, that it's reprehensible and unlawful, the fact that nobody was that the gun registry itself was unlawful and reprehensible, and that charges, essentially should have been brought. Do you anticipate anything coming from that?
Look, I don't know. All I can tell you is what I know, and that is that there was a thorough investigation that we cooperated with, and anything beyond that would be between the Attorney General and the state attorney's office, I suppose. But as far as we're concerned, it's in the rear view.
All right. Legislative session, not in the rear view, actually gets underway this morning. The Senate convenes at 9:30, the House convenes at 10, and then the governor gives his State of the State address starting at 11. We'll actually be carrying that live here on WJCT. How soon do you have to actually start paying attention?
Oh gosh, early. But we really pretty much try to keep in contact with our legislative folks, throughout the year. Tracy Polson in our office handles those relationships for us. So we've been meeting along, both on our priorities and on what they see coming forward for the last several months. So I would say, for us, it's a matter of, sort of getting our arms around what we're going to ask for, and at the same time try to figure out what they're going to do in Tallahassee that could affect us.
And what are you watching? What are you hoping to push as a priority, and what are you watching as a concern?
Well, we really wanted to lean heavily into infrastructure again this year. That's really what we're hoping to get some help from the state, on Shipyards West, that Riverwalk piece. There's a big piece there that we'd like to get done. A crosswalk in Bay Meadows that we've asked for help. I don't know if you remember the issue that we had there where the
man was killed.
Man and the young child were killed. We're asking for some help on that one. The bulkhead at the Hans Tansler Marina over on the Southbank, we're asking for funds there. Emerald Trail on Hogan Street, which all these things are priority projects for us. McCoy's Creek Park and just some additional road infrastructure projects. These are all asked from us. They're all infrastructure related.
Is it easier to focus on infrastructure with this Republican supermajority than it might be to push for other issues more related to some of your, other pet projects like health or services?
Yeah, look, you find where you can get common ground and where you can move forward. But I will say that one of the things I said when I was first talking to people about our priorities was make infrastructure sexy again. We have to focus on infrastructure because for many years we sort of let it fall down, and everything else is predicated on that. It's a foundational issue for us to make sure that our infrastructure is there. So it is absolutely a shared priority and one we felt really good about going forward with.
And things that you're watching with concern.
Yeah,
property taxes.
Yeah, oh, well, certainly that. We spent a lot of time during the budget hearings, basically in our town halls, sharing with our community that yes, we understand the need for tax relief, but this is really more of a, frankly, it looks good, but it doesn't do much for you. The average person who owned a home would get about a buck and a half back a month. Which really doesn't do too much for your pocketbook.
That's at the local level.
That's at the local level, right? And then obviously renters get nothing. But then the other thing is that it puts folks can say all day long that it does not put public safety in jeopardy. Obviously, our police and fire unions disagree with that, and they're continuing to campaign against property tax. This whole idea of eliminating property taxes, but there's a number of proposals, some having to do with homestead, other things. We're going to have to just watch where it all comes out. But my hope would be that we could, if we want to offer tax relief for our citizens, let's find something that actually solves a problem without creating another problem. And I think that's really the big thing there. But also, I tell you the other thing that I'm really, really interested to watch, and this sort of got on the radar a couple of weeks ago, this whole idea of these hedge fund backed developers buying up land with very little oversight, big tracts of land in Jacksonville that would, frankly, allow them to develop without accountability from local governance.
What would the bill provide for?
Honestly, I'm just learning more about it, but it sounds like it would bypass local governance, and the state would make it easier for these hedge fund developers to come in and buy up huge tracts of land and develop on it. Obviously we have a lot of concerns. We have spent a lot of time in our city, especially lately with our 50-year resilience plan, finding out, where are the best places to build? Where will we not be underwater? What are the things we can incentivize? And we certainly want to keep that in local hands. We don't want that taken out of our hands. Once again, it just looks like another effort to overstep a local government authority and to take a state tack on that. And I really am hoping that it doesn't pass, but we'll absolutely be watching that. And of course, anything that affects affordability, any legislation involving housing or homelessness, all those things will be things that we're absolutely tracking.
And that's something, if it's interesting to you, it's something that we'll also want to follow. Do you have a bill number on it that people can look it up?
I'll get it for you.
Okay, great. If you're just joining us, we're talking to Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan about the challenges ahead in 2026, and you're welcome to join our conversation. You can give us a call on air at 904-549-2937. You can also submit a comment or question if you go to firstcoastconnect.org. We've got a call from John in downtown Jacksonville. Good morning, John. Go ahead.
Well, good morning, Ann, and thank you for taking my call. And Mayor Deegan, always a pleasure.
Hi,
I know
John.
you were probably hoping that this was going to be a call with a shirt update for you, but
I liked your shirt the other day. You had a good shirt for us the other day. I appreciated the Trevor shirt.
John Nooney, for people who don't know, known for making shirts.
All right. Well, what I wanted to touch on, and you alluded to it with the resiliency, and and I just attended the Northeast Florida Regional Council, and you talked about downtown with infrastructure, and let me just say, save Rodman, feed the manatees. I attended at City Hall a number of years ago a meeting that had the two executive directors of the water management districts, and Lisa Reineman was sitting right in front of me. And one of the biggest takeaways is that Rodman, it's a reservoir, so it's fresh water, and that is tremendously critical. And when you were just alluding to, these bills, with these hedge funds, that is real. So anyway, I would hope, and there's a Waterways Commission meeting tomorrow, I hope they sponsor a resolution to tell Tallahassee, save Rodman, feed the manatees, tourism.
John, can I be clear? When you say save Rodman, I think the movement is to tear down the dam.
The idea is to tear it down,
You're
John.
right. Yeah, you don't want to.
No, you do want to. I think if you want that to be preserved,
you don't.
Well, Lisa Reineman would disagree with you on that wholeheartedly, and I think that most of the folks who are arguing on the environmental side of that issue would say that that is what is killing the fresh water. Really, that is what is killing. That dam at some point. I think even the fishermen in the area are recognizing in large numbers that is not working anymore.
One thing that's interesting about that, and John has been a longtime activist for waterways, but certainly taking down that dam would restore the original flow of the
Absolutely
Ocklawaha River.
Restore the Ocklawaha River. That's the most important thing, because otherwise you're not going to have a healthy river there.
One thing that's interesting about that, last year lawmakers did pass a plan to move towards removing the dam.
Yes.
And that was something that the governor did not support. But I've seen that there's been this increasing effort to get fishermen and sport fishermen and Putnam County in general more accepting of this. And it involves a list of kind of incentives and, pledges to do some additional spending to help boost sports fishing,
yes,
whatever.
Absolutely.
Fishing in that area that would, sort of supplant what's being taken away if the reservoir is not there.
Yeah, without without that healthy flow, though, it's not going to benefit anybody. That's the problem over the long haul. And from my understanding, I don't think it's that the governor is opposed to that. I don't think he's overall opposed to it. I think he didn't like the way the bill came down last year. I think that was really the bottom line. I think he wants to see more of a, more of a comprehensive effort there.
So when it comes to water, that does lead into this other issue of water use in relation to AI data centers. We heard from a very kind of well-educated caller recently that there are technologies that allow that intensive use of water to be mitigated somehow. But certainly that's been the concern for AI data centers. And there is a bill that would require additional review, allow additional community input and oversight for AI data centers, require some setbacks, some vegetative buffers. But I wanted to ask you, just what you're hearing about interest in or how the city is planning for the possibility of large scale, like a data center type.
Yeah, it is an incredible amount of water. And that is another area in which I think that the governor and I have something in common, is that he believes that those folks should pay for that. I don't know about it, honestly, Ann, because it is a lot of water. It's a lot of water. And I think that absolutely there has to be in terms of financially, there has to be a stake there. There has to be accountability there. There has to be transparency. And I like the idea of having more eyeballs on it.
Yeah, and that's for AI data centers. There is, in fact, a request out at Cecil right now that we read about in the Jacksonville Daily Record. This was reported by Karen Mathis of a super large scale water use kind of project that is being reviewed by JEA. Now, anything over 25,000 gallons per day of discharge is considered a significant industrial user by EPA.
Right.
But the Water Management District considers anything over 100,000 gallons a day of used water, not discharged water, large. This would actually be over 500,000 gallons of water per day with a maximum of 977,000 gallons of water per day. Just an enormous amount of water. This is a project that's under consideration. What do you know about it? Is it a data center?
It is not a data center. I can tell you that it is not a data center, and there's very little else I can tell you about it at this point, just because of the nature of the timing of where it is right now. But I can tell you it's not a data center.
Does water use of that level concern you, even if it's not a data center?
Honestly, I'm not the expert on what is an overabundance of water usage. I know that in all the reading that I've done on the data centers, they seem to be incredibly large in the amount of water that they use. I don't know where this falls into that metric, but I would certainly leave that to our experts in that regard.
And can you tell us, do you know what stage that review is at, when we might learn more about what that massive project is?
I can't give you the timing on it just yet.
Okay. Another massive project, jail, that will eventually be coming somewhere in Northeast Florida, a new jail. And, we talked about it last time, and you made clear a lot of, road ahead. There's so much that has not yet been decided. There's not a site picked.
Right.
There's not even necessarily someone lined up to help choose that site. So where are we at? But also, what are you doing to strategically plan for eventually, when a neighborhood is chosen, how you're going to soften the blow, how you're going to make that palatable to people who are almost reflexively, traditionally opposed to hosting a jail or a prison?
Well, I'm not sure that I agree with your premise there. I think it really depends on where it goes and what community it goes into. But I will say this. We have been working directly hand in hand with the sheriff on this process. We are in the process right now of still selecting the company that will select the sites, and hopefully we have done an RFP there. There's somebody that finished on top. We're in the process of negotiating with them at the moment. Hopefully we'll have something signed here in the next several weeks with this company. If we can't reach a deal with them, we'll go to company number 2. But then the process starts of site evaluations, which are going to take quite a bit of time. This is really, really important to get right for our community because obviously this is going to be a large scale facility.
And
so it's going to have to be
a
long-standing one, a very large piece of land, right? So we're going to have to make sure that wherever it goes, it can be there for the long haul, and that we can fit everything that we want on it, and that it works for the community and for the sheriff and for the city. So hopefully within the next few weeks, we will have that company secured that will then start analyzing sites. We have had several people that have been interested in suggesting sites, but I will say this, as we have always done, we will bring the community into these conversations. I don't think it is a foregone conclusion that every community is not going to want this if it goes into a particular area. I think it depends on where in that area it would go. So I do understand what you're saying in terms of people who reflexively say, hey, we don't want this in our area. I think it comes down to where it goes, honestly, where how much buffer, how much land, how far out, all those things. And hopefully we'll get a better idea of that. But I think it is going to be a process, and we want to make sure. And this has been something on which we have been in total agreement with the sheriff's office, and that is we absolutely have to get this right. We don't want to go back, in a few years and go, gosh, we should have done this, or we wish we had done that, or this, So it is going to be a laborious process and a very expensive one. So we want to make sure we get it correct.
We're talking to Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan and taking your calls and questions. We've got a call from Tom on the west side. Good morning, Tom. Go ahead.
Good morning to you all, too. I've got to say again, I don't believe the city needs nor can afford a new jail. We have other alternatives to holding people in jail that are very good, and we have not even yet pursued them. We can renovate the old jail. And the other thing I got to say is, as a taxpayer, I really just do not like that the city has a tendency to neglect buildings until they're falling apart and then come to us and say, we need all this tax money to build a new one. Happened with the courthouse, happened with JEA, now we're doing it with the jail. I want the city to take ownership and stewardship of their own properties.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate your remarks, and when I talked about infrastructure, that's really one of the things that I mean as well. I don't disagree with him on the premise that we got to take care of our properties and make sure that we're getting the full use out of them. I think that jail is in bad shape, but it is, and that is what it is at this point. But I will say there's another issue in terms of that jail site, and that is that it is on prime, riverfront practically property right there where a lot of folks would like to see development, either, a convention center or some part of the entertainment district, or, you're seeing all these beautiful parks and things that are going in downtown, all this new housing, everything that's happening to make our downtown a place where people want to live, work, and play, right? And you don't really want a jail facility right in the middle of that. And I think that's part of it too. So part of it is the vision of our city going forward.
The Four Seasons, right?
Right.
It's just down the street.
I mean, you just don't want that. So I think at the end of the day, in the condition of the jail, which now is absolutely abhorrent, and the fact that we really do want a facility, and I know that this is the sheriff really wants this as well, that has the other amenities that are involved, the mental health, the adolescent, all those things that are part and parcel of what they need for the jail. And I think that's the idea, is to make sure that it's basically more of a campus situation where you're not piecemealing everything. And I think that's what we're looking at. So I agree on the premise of what he's saying. We do need to better maintain our city facilities, no question about it. That tends to be a thing we always have done in this city, is we kick the can until things are dilapidated, and then, gosh, what do? You got to tear them down or start over. So don't disagree. But on this one, I think there's a number of reasons that we want a new facility.
Mark on the south side. Good morning, Mark. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning. I'll admit I'm kind of ignorant to the whole issue surrounding these the IT centers that we're talking about, or that you were talking about. So I don't really know why they need all the water, but nonetheless, I guess they do. So if we were going to have one put here locally, is it possible to use some type of land that is somewhat not used right now? For example, at the St. Johns River Power Park, where those huge steam chimneys used to be, you have the river right there. Could they not draw in water from that portion of the river, run it through some type of a desalinization plant where it wouldn't be taking water out of the aquifer or further down the river? It would be largely impacted or affected by the tides and the ocean water right there. Thanks,
Mark. I mean, I do think JEA has got plans for that River Power Park parcel that is underway, another facility.
Yes, they absolutely do. But I take the point. I will admit to not being an expert on how these things, could be constructed. But that is something for the folks that know more about that. But I just know that obviously in our state right now, water is at a premium, and it's something that everyone has a stake in. We want to make sure that we have enough clean, fresh water for our community, and I think that's the important thing to look at. But I don't know, in terms of his suggestion. Sounds like it's something that could work, but I don't know enough about the process.
Yeah, I mean, desal costs a lot of money, but as our caller said,
that's something we'll be doing anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that the new facilities have, this what's described as a closed loop system, which allows it to be reused and less fresh water used. But yeah, I mean, there may just be a cost associated with that. We've got a email question from Clyde. He says, in light of the governor's plan to cut property taxes, how will the city of Jacksonville afford a proposed 100-acre campus for a pretrial detention center outside the core city and far away from the courts and Shands-UF Hospital? I mean, obviously a jail question there. But
yeah, look, we've said all along, our hope is to have somebody else build it and lease it. That's the idea. It's still going to be expensive, obviously, for us. Look, it's a matter of priorities. We'll manage. We'll do what we have to do. But as I've said many times, and as our law enforcement and fire unions have said, it would be a dire situation to get rid of property taxes in this state. There are many things that could be done without eliminating property taxes. And this is in no way saying that people don't need some relief. The bottom line is, let's do something that works and it doesn't put our public safety in peril. I'm not exactly sure what they'll end up doing in the legislature, but my hope is that they'll listen to those voices, that they've been there before. It's not their first rodeo. They've seen cuts that have come to law enforcement. And we have just now put our law enforcement and firefighters in a position to get back into to get into FRS, to make sure that they have the salaries they need that can keep them staffed and keep their recruiting good. And I don't want to see any of that get affected.
We have a fairly specific inquiry from Jason on Facebook. He says, "Hi, Mayor Deegan. Several MyJax tickets, which are kind of a way that residents notify the city of a complaint. Several MyJax tickets have been submitted to collect litter from the ditches in the Jacksonville Heights area, which expired last year without being worked. Your office received an email asking for assistance on this matter at the beginning of this month without reply. Could you please look into this?"
Well, I will look into it today, because I talk to Al Ferraro every day, who spearheads this stuff for us, and has that guy been incredible in terms of making sure that we're taking care of litter and blight. So I just wrote that down. I'll talk to Al today and find out where we are on it.
All right. Thanks, Jason, for the message, and we'll look to follow with you. Oh, so I want to ask you now a little bit about just what you're watching in other cities. Obviously, this issue of ICE enforcement has become not just controversial, but lethal in the last week in Minneapolis, what they've seen. There's not necessarily any indication that Jacksonville would be targeted for enforcement or additional enforcement, as we've seen in other cities, but they have seemed to land on Democratic administrations more than the Republican counterparts. Are you having conversations inside your office about what would happen if, how to prepare? Have you talked to the sheriff about, whether he's learned anything? Like, what do you know about the possibility of something like that?
Ann, I don't know much about it. I will say that we have received no indication that we are going to be targeted in this way. I do think perhaps one of the reasons, and I don't know, obviously we have a large immigrant community, and I suspect they're very nervous. We have heard from a lot of folks in the immigrant community that they're frightened about this. I would simply say that we always expect our citizens to be treated with respect and in a constitutional manner. But the way our consolidated government works, the sheriff's office and the mayor's office work completely independent of each other. I have no authority over what the sheriff's office does, and vice versa. This is a completely independent organization. So at the end of the day, I think having a sheriff that has that responsibility outside of what the mayor does, that is more in line with those policies. Let's say that. Let's put it that way. I think the sheriff is supportive of what of those ICE policies. I'm not saying of what just happened. I'm saying that they have been in partnership with ICE for many years.
Yeah.
And I think there's a good relationship there. So I don't see anything on the horizon that would indicate that they would target us, because I think they already have a pretty good partnership with JSO.
I want to ask you about kind of a neat partnership that the city is now involved in, and it's something called the EU Cities Gateway Program.
Yeah.
Kind of a cool thing. City of Jacksonville is now going to be one of just 32 cities worldwide to be a part of this. Tell us, first of all, how Jacksonville was selected, who's partnering, who are the other cities, and what it's going to provide for.
I can't tell you exactly how we were selected. I know that we were only one of 32 that were selected. It's a 2025 to 2028 EU Cities Gateway North America program. So we're going to take part specifically in the affordable and attainable housing cluster. So what will happen is we've got our folks at DIA involved in that. We've got our housing authority involved in that. We've already sent DIA up to the very first meeting. I know that. That was in Canada. And there'll be a number of additional meetings that will focus on that affordable housing cluster that our team and our affordable housing team will take part in addition to DIA. So the cities that are involved are
I saw Atlanta,
Quebec,
Barcelona.
Yeah, Quebec, Toronto, Atlanta. I don't know how to say this city. Is it Tampere, Finland?
Your guess
anyway,
is as good as mine.
Barcelona, Spain, and Parma, Italy.
Okay.
And so there'll be a series of meetings that happen over the course of the next several years. as a sort of a coalition to find best practices in terms of affordable and attainable housing, which of course we desperately need here. And I'm grateful that we're part of that coalition.
It'll be interesting to watch. 2027 mayoral election
Mm.
could feel really far away, but I'm guessing that it's starting to feel like it's approaching. 2026 will become real with fundraising, competition, the political hijinks that come with any election. So
It feels like we've never left political hijinks, doesn't it, though, Anne? Really? I mean, honestly, I feel like we're in times now where it sort of seems like perpetual, a perpetual machine. But
perpetual hijinkery.
yeah, hijinkery. Oh, I like that word, hijinkery. Yes, but I will say this: I can't believe how fast the time has flown. So for me, I'm sure I'll blink and it will be here. But I'm just focused on getting the job done, and I think that we're going to continue to focus on the same priorities that we brought into the office. And at this point, I don't know who will run. But I feel very, very good about running on the record of things that we've accomplished in this first term.
What about fundraising? I mean, at some point you will have to have a war chest. You will have to fight a challenger. What is the amount of money? Like, what's it going to cost to mount a successful, defense of your office as mayor or to get reelected? Do you have a PAC that's working right now to bring in that money?
There is a political PAC that has raised about $1.5 million to date. So we've begun that process. Very, very grateful to say that we have received broad support across the political spectrum. Democrats, Republicans, independents, very heavily investing in this campaign because they see the progress that we've made over the last few years. Jacksonville is really on the move, and you can see it in every possible metric between growth and business and all of the eyeballs that are on our city right now, and the numbers are great, and we're growing. So it is. I think it's a wonderful time to invest in our city, and a lot of people are doing that, and I think that we have a great case to make for the fact that we have more to do and we need to get it done. So
I just briefly want to touch on the literacy initiative that the city has ongoing, because
thank you for bringing that up. I'm really excited about that.
Well, the former mayor, John Payton, has become more involved and more prominent in this effort. Obviously, he had a literacy initiative.
Yes.
If I could say it.
Yes.
I could read it. He did, while he was in office, it was a big priority for him, but you've kind of brought him back around on this issue.
I meet with Mayors Peyton Delaney and former Sheriff Nat Glover once a quarter, and one of the things that we're constantly brainstorming, ideas, and one of the first things we talked about was literacy, because I told him that was going to be a huge priority for the administration, and loved what he did with the Mayor's Book Club, and he immediately said, I want to be helpful there. So what he did is he, through the Gate Foundation, contributed $1 million. So that every 4-year-old in our city can get one book a month for a year. So So if you're already signed up in an early learning center, you're automatically, your kids are going to get those books. If you're not, we have a website. We're going through an organization called First Readers, FERST Readers. And so if people go to firstreaders.org/Jacksonville, they can sign their children up to get this book a month free. We are so committed to this because we know that it is not only an issue of future success for these children who will be our future leaders, but it's a public safety issue, it's a quality of life issue, and we know that if we can get kids reading at that third grade level, up to third grade you learn to read, and after third grade you read to learn, and if you don't make that switch, it's tough. So he has been such a great partner and a great advocate in that. As they say, there's no new ideas under the sun, really. We looked at his blueprint and we said, let's just keep that going. And I hope that every mayor from here on out will keep that initiative going, because it's just a wonderful thing to be able to offer to kids in our city.
Well, Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for coming on. We'll see you again next month.
Thank you, Anne.